Hey, so you didn't think I was here today. Welcome back. So I found a deal on eBay for these square wrenches, and the silver wrench I had repaired back on the milling machine, so now I've got one for the lathe, one dedicated for the vise on the mill. That's for the other vise for the mill, and this one doesn't have a home, so it gets relegated to the toolbox. The weather we've been having this year has been really crazy. And so on this day, it was like 50 degrees. So I opened the garage door, and that's why you keep seeing the sun come and go from the clouds. Well, guess what? The next day, it was 19 degrees, and that's why I had to fire up the stove. The taper attachment was sitting horizontally for a long period of time, and water became trapped between the two halves. That's why there's so much etching on the bottom side of this. So I cleaned it up as best I could. Not a whole lot I can do about that. It functions like it should, so shouldn't cause any problem. Had a few dings here on the top where it got impacted by something. No problem, I just stoned it a little bit. Bolt salad. That long bolt has a little bit of damage to it, so I'm probably going to have to replace it in the future. And I thought this was kind of a neat way to lock these two together, is just the knob is threaded through and there's room enough for a set screw on the back side, so it locks to the bolt. The position of this first dovetail here will allow you to determine the length of the taper on your part. So in other words, the further down you set this, the longer the taper will be. So you have to just kind of index off of your part and figure out exactly where you want the taper to begin and end at. There is no scale for that. I put grease on the adjuster here because there's no provision for oiling that, and it's a low use item anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. If I put grease on it, it's going to stay put and I don't have to worry about it for a long time. I can tell by the way this feels when I slide it that the back half of the taper attachment was not used very much, and the front half was used some. How much I don't know, but I had to come up with a happy medium between the two halves of the slide to get the adjustment dialed in. These two bolts just hold the two halves of the taper attachment together once you have the desired taper or degree dialed in. If you remember from the last video, I just hung the bracket for the taper attachment onto the saddle, and I didn't really have any way of determining the proper height. So as you'll see, I figure out that it is just all the way up on the bolt holes and it's exactly in the right place. Can't you just feel the disappointment that I can't use a ratchet? I hate using just plain old Allen wrenches. I avoid them at all costs. So I just walked the bracket up into place, and as you can see, it flushes out on both sides to the saddle. Just to verify that I wasn't causing any preload to the crossfeed screw, I went ahead and pulled that bolt back out, and the bushing that is there underneath fits perfectly. There's no preload to it, and it just slides right into place. Alright, so how does this contraption work? So if you loosen these two clamp bolts here that clamp the taper attachment to the bed, you can see that I can move the whole carriage assembly, and that would be as if you were going to make a normal cut. It doesn't matter what angle position the taper attachment is in, because the whole thing is moving. And to cut a taper, of course, you would need a piece of material to reference off of, but you would lock down the clamp bolts to the bed and figure out exactly your start and stop points and set your angle. And if you look here, you can actually see very slowly that the cross slide is pulling out as it travels down the taper attachment. Alright, I know this is not a good method for doing this, but there is a machined pad on either side there, so I'm referencing off of that. And I'm just trying to get it close enough so I can set the scale roughly to where it's supposed to be at. I need to go back later after I get the tailstock installed and reference it again and make sure that I have it zeroed. Sometimes people see things in your video that you don't notice, like the fact that your wire brushes wore slap out. So I went and cleaned out my drawer. Don't ask me why there's a shoe shine brush in there. And I threw a bunch of that away, but I want to say thanks to Christopher for pointing out the fact that I need to get some new wire brushes. So first thing is, a lot of times you buy the assortment pack and you wind up with all this crap that you don't use. I just want the stainless steel ones with the little mohawk on the end, and that's it. So after digging on Amazon for a bit, I found this bucket of brushes for basically $1 a piece. So Christopher, if you would like to claim your free brushes, then just send me an email from the About page with your address, and I'll gladly send you some free brushes. And for everyone else, there'll be an auction on eBay for 1 penny for 2 brushes. Link to my eBay in the description. Thanks for watching.